Hello, my name is Imani Tahira Hopkins. I'm the coordinator of performing arts at Notre Dame High School in downtown San Jose, and we're going to be starting this live TED chat on Twitter. So if you don't know what that is, log on to Twitter and check out the hashtag on the left side of the screen there, the TED Ed chat. That is the tag for this conversation. So far, the first question is, how can we support students to experiment creatively in all areas of study? I'm going to facilitate this conversation and kind of let this be the back channel for a lot of the comments that I see here. If you have any questions or thoughts or concerns, feel free to put them in here / in Twitter, the live place of the world. Oscar says, cultivate a classroom culture that sees failure as learning experiences. So what does that kind of look like for your classrooms? Are you seeing failure as learning experiences, and what does that kind of look like in your particular learning environment? In my experience, students' preconceived ideas of school are in the way. If we begin by showing them what their ideas and questions matter, curiosity and exploration comes naturally. I would follow up with that and say, how is that being modeled? How do we, as educators, model the difference between those preconceived notions that obviously students have for a reason, and the ideal of what that creative potential could look like. Also added, and we do that by failing ourselves and showing our students how to deal with failure. Many teachers will never show their failures. Do you have an example of maybe how you have maybe failed as a teacher, and how that framed a learning opportunity for you to continue to grow and teach your students to grow as well? Project says, maybe failure is not an end, but a place where inquiry and curiosity begins. Love that. It's a really great way of looking at the process. It says, what we can give students is the opportunity to fail safely and encounter and solve problems, and also to follow their passion, which I think is important, especially when it comes to forming those passions in them, to not get stuck on the process, but let the process be that, which has clearly ups and downs. Somebody says, why would you start a fight between intuition and science? I think that's interesting. They list a quote from Albert Einstein saying, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Interesting. I would have to chew on this a little bit more to kind of give an opinion per se, but I do think that it's interesting to note that relationship between intuition and science. I think that originally science was intuition. It was the process of thinking something and figuring out what the process was, whatever it was. We didn't have a method until we tried something and it worked. So in that sense, the creative mind has always been connected to science. That's just my personal, honest opinion. I don't see a difference between, or I don't see a value difference between a STEAM pathway versus a visual and performing arts pathway or a technology pathway. I think that all of these are tools that benefit the product of all things. But you can't be creative. You can't be creative without logic, and you can't be logical without creativity in some sense. I know that sounds contradictory, but it's just what I believe. So question number 2 is, how can we measure the level of comprehension and retention of knowledge in our students? So I'm going to place it down here so you can also see it as well. Um, I think this is an interesting one because I think there's so many different levels or varieties of things that tell us what we are understanding or not, whether our students are understanding or not. So looking at the level of comprehension, it's not necessarily could they read it back to you, but what is telling you that your students are engaged with the work, that they're interested in it. How is that affecting your assessment of them and their participation in class? There are some ways that you can incorporate creativity in your approach for that as well. Mentioned something else that was really interesting. He said that research shows that we need to test the same area 5 to 6 times to compensate for daily fitness or making sure that it sticks. And I asked if this is something that, he's practicing in his classroom management, whether it's in gaming or other creative activities. What other things are being contributed to his class that are really heightening that maximum of retention? Always something safe to ask. Yeah, it seems like I'm talking obviously a lot more on Twitter, but really the point of having this live feed is to dialogue on any of those things. If anyone would like to call in and ask a few questions, you're more than welcome to do so. It's open seat, a few open seats if you have any questions about this particular subject. Again, we're on Twitter on the TED Ed chat. You can log on and check out more information there. We are moving toward question 3 pretty soon. So right now we're on question 2. How can we measure the level of comprehension and retention of knowledge in the classroom? A student answered for in question number 2 and said, have students choose how they would like to be assessed. Make sure overall concept is grasped. I think that's important out of the mouths of our students themselves, because we all learn in different ways. We all grasp in different ways. I definitely would say that when it comes to everyone's learning style, it's not the same. So when you ask a student how they are able to retain information, it's hard to put it into a box. It has to be one method. I think having multiple methods makes for a better percentage of retention rate for our students. And I think having a variety of methods, so using different things in different times, and obviously exercising all of the methods, but allowing students to really learn in the way that is best fit for them. It's really important. Allowing students the opportunity to synthesize, ideate, innovate, and share their new knowledge and understandings. That's powerful. Really putting it really puts the ownership of their work in their own hands, and that's something that's really awesome. Hi, Jordan. Welcome to your first blab. That's awesome. Right now, we're just chatting about, we're on a live chat on Twitter. So we're talking about a subject about experimenting in creative classrooms. So you can log on to Twitter. You have some questions. That's awesome. I'm all ears. You can call in if you'd like.
Hi, Imani.
Hi, how are you, Jordan?
I'm doing well. So I noticed the reason why I kind of came into this channel is because I saw creative classrooms, and I thought that was very interesting. I actually just graduated from a 3-month program at a school they call the General Assembly. I don't know if you've heard of it. Okay. It's they do a lot of like collaborative / hands-on like work that involves design and a lot of so designing like products for the future, basically. Nice. So we do a lot of drawing on boards, and we do like a lot of sketching, and like we design our let's say if I was designing a mobile application or designing something digital, I'd probably draw it up on a piece of paper and then like prototype it with a piece of paper and whatnot, and then go from there. But anyways, why I came on was really just ask you more about what do you think about the way classrooms in middle school and high school. I mean, from my experience, it's been it was very difficult for me to really I don't want to say expose, but really reach my true potential in terms of creativity in middle school and high school, in terms of applying that thinking process, which I learned only a couple of months ago in this course, that allowed me to really work that way. What do you think? How do you feel about that? I mean, how do you think we can get out of this trap? I think it's almost a trap that the system has really locked us in that way. I feel like something has to be done.
So I would agree with that. It's interesting. I myself am an alum of the high school that I teach at. And I came back many years after, obviously, being in high school. I went to school and, but all the while I was an artist as a student. So I had a different perspective of my education process. It was a very academic heavy school, but myself, I thought very differently. I can say in the last 20 years, education has changed so rapidly that I think everyone is just trying to catch up with it. So you have some innovative schools, like what sounds like the school that you came from, that really is taking a new approach of breaking down the mold and really getting to the root of why we're doing what we're doing. We're not trying to, we're not building unilateral education programs for people anymore. You're not just going into medicine or just going into academics or, industry. So it's more about looking at what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you feel that your part in the world is going to look like? For me, it was always weird that I was a dancer and interested in humanities, but now I'm teaching how art can be seen as a conscious thing that speaks to the issues and problems in the world. So what seemed like two conflicting subjects actually are exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Actually, I come from a background of music. I played guitar, and I came into this with no prior experience in computer programming or anything like that. But somehow that whole music and composing and writing notes translated so seamlessly.
Absolutely.
Because, it's interesting because you go from data, which is like, writing a score, a musical score, into creating something that's like music and has emotion. And it's pretty much, it pretty much worked in parallel with the coding. Using
absolutely
to create
and this is it's a similar thing with if you've seen the video that this TED Talk is about, it's pretty much like, I love it because it talks so much about like opening your gaze to look at things from a different perspective, throwing out PowerPoints and using dancers to describe scientific hypotheses. That it seems counterintuitive for what our traditional structure of education looks like. However, if we were to look at what it means to fully look at patterns and how does the body work, it can be used to say whatever it is that you're trying to say. In the same way with music, music is so mathematical, it's so logical. There are so many things that you can be learning from being on those in-between things. Having music is like it's an awesome background that is not just meant for just music. It goes into all of the different métiers in such a unique way. So I'm not at all surprised that you had no experience in coding and went from music to coding. That's
it seems like
phenomenal.
We're entering like an era of like you said, like almost personalization, where everyone's kind of going categories and stuff, like micro categories of different career paths. But like what I think about is like, how is that going to affect the way we work in the future? How is that going to translate into optimization? Is that going to be something that's going to make society better, or is that going to be something? I'm thinking, is that going to open up more opportunities for jobs, or is that going to be something that deters us and like it gives us makes us wait longer for that path that we ultimately seek. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a
Go ahead.
Really good question. I think somebody's trying to call in. I don't want to miss Dr. Donald. I'm gonna let you in here, but I lost you, Jordan.
I didn't want to lose Jordan. I had a comment on Jordan.
Hi, Jordan. Here he comes. Here he comes.
Got it back?
Okay. Here we go. There you go.
Hi, how are you this evening?
Doing well.
Hi.
Hey, listen, Jordan, I've been talking, and you can tell I've been around a while. And the point you made about people going their own ways is great. That's what I see. One of the purposes of education and being probably, but the problem is that's not where education is being driven right now. If you were to look back, I'm going to sound like a professor. I'm sorry, but that's what I am. If you were to look back in history and you take a look, we start with public education in the U.S. being a religious base, the old Deluder-Satan Act. But as you've gone through, I did most of my teaching in the 80s and 90s when it was a very individual process. We had middle schools that actually exposed students to new ideas, new things, and then they went out and discovered what they were good at, and it became their passion. And that's the goal that they went toward. The goal. If you were to ask someone at that time what the goals of education were, it might have been individual improvement, democratization. But now, if you take a look at the drivers in education, it's not individual; it's corporate needs. I think Pennsylvania is going through a process right now where they have corporate committees that are looking at choosing curriculum for schools. It's a really different trend, I'm afraid. We're trying to push kids that are round pegs in some very square holes. And I can see some real issues coming up. I just wanted to comment on that. It's kind of a passion with me right now.
I want to build on that note for a second. I've noticed that. I mean, I have some friends who are still in college, and what I see is a lot of them are thinking about working for the same 4 companies or the same 5 big enterprise companies. Mm-hmm. I want to work for Deloitte, which is some huge consulting firm. And it's kind of scary because they don't realize that that's not what they want. It's just something that kind of it's almost society almost made them believe that they want that role or that career path, and they they put them into these programs for 1 year, 2 years after they get out of college. And they train them for that specific position, and ultimately that's what becomes their life. And I don't know if that's, like you said, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I don't know what current stats are. When excuse me, the generation prior to mine, you got out of high school, you went to work for an industry and company, and you stayed there your entire life, got your gold watch, and you got out. Yeah. My generation has gone through change. And now the current, well, I guess I'm at least 2 generations past current, but it's not going to be though. It's not that way. People stay at a job for 4 or 5 years, and something else comes along because that job is either gone or they found something that has something they like better. So it is a constant stage of learning. It's what I wish I could remember statistics better, but things that they're teaching in science courses now, when they start their freshman year, are obsolete by the time they graduate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's an interesting time. It's a time that education has been unsettled since about 1983 with the Nation at Risk report. I think it was 83, 82, somewhere in there. I was in grad school at the time. And it has not settled down. And I don't see it settling down soon.
So can I ask you a question on that? Because I really, really value the connections of the generations when it comes to education, because the connection.
You don't stand up though and show a picture of yourself in a one-room schoolhouse starting out, but yeah, I appreciate it.
No, I mean seriously, the tradition and innovation is so pivotal to work together. Yeah. but I'm not sure if this disconnect is if the gap is getting too wide to hold both sides.
I shouldn't tell you what I do. I teach instructional technology.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I had my first computer in a classroom in 1978. So I've been down the road a few times.
Awesome.
But yeah.
So do you see kind of do you see more of that collaborative work that will lead us toward instilling passion in our students for the things that they are made to do? Or do you?
I think we have everything in place except leadership.
Yes, I would agree with that.
You asked.
I would agree with that.
And I'm gonna be apolitical here. You name one candidate that has clearly stated a vision for education. In either party, clearly stated. I can't name one, and the ones that have, I don't agree with. So
yeah.
I'm very unsure of what's going to happen, and I'm not terribly optimistic, unfortunately. I think we have the capabilities of doing some amazing things. I just don't think we have the leadership to do them.
Yeah, so how do you inspire your students to find a reason to still pursue learning?
Okay. Teaching is, and then people had one of the things when I did my dissertation, I found out that teaching, especially elementary teacher. Are you an elementary teacher by chance? Elementary? Yeah.
Me? I'm a
high school teacher. I was a high school teacher. Elementary teaching was one of the most lonely jobs there was. And people never understood that, but they were never around adults. One of the things that technology has done has made them a lot more social, which I think was helped a lot in teaching. I think with my students, I would try to inspire them to look at the work they do in their classroom and in their school and the results that produces. That's their sphere of influence. And I think that's extremely important. And that's where, I taught for quite a number of years and had the joy of actually coaching for a number of years. And joy for teaching comes every day from individuals and the things that happen. And I think I just try to move my students in that direction. If you do the little things, the big things will come.
That's a great.
Well, I'm sorry I've taken up too much time here. I'll let somebody drop in.
No, that was awesome. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
Well, I don't know how wise I am. You have a very nice day.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye. That was awesome. That was really awesome. Thank you, Jordan, and thank you, Dr. Donald, for giving us some nuggets of wisdom. We're well on our way. I think we're on question 3. We're still on question 3 on the live chat on Twitter. Let me put that on the sidebar there. I think it's interesting to be looking at really where education is at right now versus where it's been and where it's going, because I think the part that we always miss is that we don't know what the future is going to look like. We don't know what the future of education will look like. And I love that at the end of the TED Talk video, John looks at the audience and says, maybe for once we'll be able to use dancers and sit in an audience and just for the sake of watching the human body in motion. Like, that's what dance is so amazing at. Yes, it can do all these different things. We could look at how we're incorporating art in a wide variety of our métier, our studies. But what about art for the sake of humanity? You know, like, what is that connection? Where is that? So anyways, we're on question number 3 right now, which is, how can we guide students to reject learning crutches and aim for full understanding? I think one thing that I see a lot, especially since I teach dance first and I teach everything else kind of secondarily. Dance is my first area of influence. There are some things that you just can't fake. I think when it comes to embodying things in your body, you just, there's no way to fake that. It's really simple to memorize words or equations and let them work for you without fully understanding them. But when it comes to dance, if you don't know the movements, you just don't know it, and your body abandons you in that sense. So I think that's probably a tangible way that I could explain what crutches do to us in our learning is, you know, it just doesn't come out right. And yet, too often we're testing students for the information without really testing if they really grasp the information. So that's the heart of that question, if that makes sense. And I think the whole formative summative assessment has been it's been a topic that's come up a lot with the growth mindset and looking at failure as a first attempt at learning. But are we really preaching that rather than just saying it? You know, are we really walking those things out? So I'm open to comments on that. But right now I'm just going to check on some of these posts on Twitter and see where people are at. People have been talking about this lately, about taking away the point values in grades. Frankly, I did a lot of that this year, cutting down the value of the work and really focusing on the reiteration of the work that would cause better retention, really focusing on the fact that I wanted them to retain the information, whether they got a grade for it or not. Especially with subjects that build upon themselves, it's better to kind of look for that, and it I think it was very successful. Actually, the product of what I got at the end of the semester, and looking at the end of the semester, is so much more fruitful than had I had kept the focus on make sure you get this in because you need the points, you know. So just letting homework be, you know, a part of the process. If you need to do it, obviously it's encouraged to do your homework, but it's not as high of a point standard. So the focus is not really at that being the crutch. Jenna Rogers says that small successes build into big confidence. Hey, how interesting. Jenna Rogers, you're calling in. That's awesome.
Hi.
Hi, that's so awesome. I was just reading your
Oh my goodness,
comment
thanks.
Oh, you're fine.
I love it.
Pretty big, so. Thanks.
I'm fabulous. How are you doing?
Doing good. Doing pretty good. I was just looking at your comment that small successes build into big confidence, and a lot of little wins could give kidlets the courage to lean a little less. And the second one is up there somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Stumble and succeed. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually, I was a 5th grade teacher for about 9 years, and I recently moved to my county office as an ed tech STEM specialist. And that was a piece of it, was that when I think about who I was as a teacher was someone who said, it's okay that the answer's wrong. Tell me how you got the wrong answer. Let's think about where that came from. And I think that we as a society and as like education, we think that this word failure is this dirty word. And if the kids fail, then it's someone's fault, right? Like we've got these big F words. And really, I feel like when my kids failed and they felt like they could fail, and that's when they examined why they failed.
Right. Yeah. I think just using dance as the metaphor, I think for me, it's easy to say if you fall, you get up and you try it again. You know, there's that tangibility to the body that we just know so well. But the same rules apply for everything else. So even having critical work in an arts type of a classroom, having the tangible model to refer to when we're looking at the critical stuff is really helpful for me. And I've always tried to tell colleagues, obviously, who are in maybe more of a tangible, like a traditional type of classroom, that the same rules apply. If you're to do something creative where there is no fail option or whatever, and then you see what you're able to evaluate, you know, how did you come up with those different things? And let's look at the process versus the product. The product just tells us what to, focus in on more, you know, and I think that's something that, how would you say that you're working with at the 5th grade level? How would you say that you were able to encourage them to be fearless in the process so that they weren't so focused on the expectation?
So what I did was, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, no. I actually had a failure wall in my classroom, and it was the front of the classroom, and it was like, failure is here, and it was like a game board. And the next thing I think was like, ask questions, or like, where can I find the answer? Who can I ask the question of? And then practice was the next step. And it's like, how do I get a hold of this practice? Can I get it from the teacher? Can I get it from someone else? Is it going to be, like I think about Prodigy and those online things where it's all about kids getting practice with genuine, quick feedback, right? And then after practice, it was like, try again. And then the two options were either you fail better or you succeed. And then if you succeed, the next, like the final step was go find something else to fail at. And so every time the kids were snots, like every time they did something smelly and awful, I would be like, all right, congratulations. You just failed at sitting quietly. Let's look at our failure wall. Yeah. Why did we fail? Oh, because it's the day before Thanksgiving and we're all very excited.
Yeah. And I think it gives a different perspective as to just human nature. I think when we're remembering that we actually are human, and that the part of that learning process is something that goes both ways. You know, we as educators are equally still learning. And, you know, why is it that I can't remember your name? Maybe because I have two people with J's sitting next to each other. Okay, you know, even just taking it down to such a simple level as saying, this is a part of life. Like this part, if you can get this part, you'll survive in any educational setting, you know? That's just a really awesome thing. And I think even looking at elementary, going into middle school, even high school, it's interesting that it's usually not until we get to college or grad school do we get those urges to explore to those end degrees, and not without that idea of fear of failure. So how is it that we can frame those experiences for our younger students so that when they do get to those moments where they can quote unquote change the world, they're willing to do it and not have to break through those boundaries of fear?
And that fear is such a big part of it. Like we tell kids, like we measure them, right? They get great. And you get an A if you're a good kid, and you get an F if you're a bad kid. And it's just so unfair because we don't really, so for me, I got into education because I want to believe that education is the great equalizer, that it's the thing that will allow anybody at any stage of their life to turn around and make another decision, to make a different decision for themselves. And that's really hard to stand on when it feels like there's this, because that means that there's this diversity, right? There's this, because like I taught in a really impoverished area. And so it's like, if we're going to teach these kids who society is already kind of being hard on, that, that failure isn't an option and all these other cliches, then we're not really doing them a service.
Right. Yeah. And that says a lot. That really does say a lot about what our job is, what our responsibility is. But also, education isn't necessarily going down the drain. It's more about the one-on-one connections that we're making with our students. You know, what are those different things that we can hold on to and say, listen, I was once in your shoes. I was once in this chair. I can now say that these are a couple of things that I've learned along the way. You know, it's not just about what's in the books. It's not just about what the new fad in education is, but how can we really have that connection with our students?
And, you know, like in the past with the No Child Left Behind Act and the high risks with the high stakes testing, it feels so impossible in that moment, right? To, okay, that's great in theory, but in practice, I've got to take this test in April. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel that so deeply. And even though I knew that test scores were just a picture of one moment, if my kids did poorly, I took it so personally. And I think that there's this big separation between what we know good learning is and then like the expectations that we set for ourselves as teachers.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the thing too. When people start talking about like no points, like lowering the point scale so that their grades look better, and throwing out the minuscule points for the sake of focusing on the learning experience, I think that there's a very fine line between those two things. You know, I'm not trying to make sure that everyone in my class leaves with a perfect score. I'm trying to make sure people leave my class thinking and wanting more, you know, digging deeper into the subject, whether their grades look like they really got that information. And sometimes that's a controversial place to be in. But at the same time, I think looking at the bigger picture of learning for them is really where I think that's where
I think you're right.
Really comes.
And I think about the idea of like that end result, right? Like if at the end of the day, I want my fifth graders to feel like they've accomplished something, like they're walking out of the door with a little bit more knowledge than they had when they walked out, then they don't really need a letter grade for that. What they need is experience, and they need a safe place to fail.
Right. Yeah. And that's our job. Like that's what we have to do, you know. They deserve that. And I feel like we do too. Absolutely. You know, as educators, we need that too. Because I do think that that's a hard part. That's the tricky part, you know, because we're kind of advocating for both sides. But you know, how can we do that in a healthy way that's beneficial to everyone involved? I totally am in agreement.
Right. And I think, like, again, we come back to these big F words, right? Like fear. Like I think about, so when I started teaching, I started in 2007, and I was so embarrassed to admit this. I loved a quiet classroom and worksheets. That was like, and in my district in those moments, that's what I was applauded for. It was like, you walked into my room, it was silent and kids were working, and that was a big thumbs up for me. Which is ridiculous when you think about it now. Like I think about what my classroom looked like a month ago before I left, and we're doing breakout EDU and the kids are screaming. And it's insanity, but there's so much more actual learning happening. And I think that there's this amount of fear in us, right? Like that it's like, I know how to do it because I've done it for 8 years this way. And now all of a sudden I have to change. Well, I'm not so comfortable with that. I don't know what that's going to look like. It's not just the kids that are scared of failing.
Right. That's very true. I mean, I know that that's definitely a culture shift in education, period. I think it's happening everywhere. And yet, I think it's a matter of standing up for that learning that you know is happening. You know, I think that's the hardest part, is really making sure that, you know, we continue to advocate for the learning that we know that is happening. It may not look pretty, it might look messy, but hey, when you're making a cake, it's pretty messy, but the end result is really good. You know, everyone wants to eat that fresh, warm cake. So, I mean, in the same way, I think it's invaluable to our students that we continue to evolve as educators as well as advocates.
Absolutely. And I love that you use that metaphor of the cake, because it makes me think, like, if I tried right now to make a wedding cake right now, I don't think it would turn out very nice. But, you know, if I spent a couple months with failures and fed cake to all my friends, I'd make it a pretty decent looking cake.
Yes.
But it's like the when you were talking, I was thinking about that idea of process over product, right? Like that it's more important to engage in that process of learning than it is in questioning and failing and figuring out things. That's more important. That process is more important than the actual product of whatever it is that's made.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I'm 100% with you. So what are you doing right now?
I'm blabbing. By the way, this is my first blab ever. Yeah. So
welcome. I love
so I'm like basically talking to myself in my office, and probably everyone around is like, okay, Jenna's lost it. Or they think I'm on the phone, one or the other.
I have folks in my office.
And I just kind of like fell into this TED Tech chat. Like I've
Sweet.
Me too. I'm part of other learning communities, but I've never done an TED Ed chat before.
That's awesome. It happens weekly, every Tuesday from 3 to 4 Pacific, or 6 to 7.
I'm in California, so I'm still at work.
Sweet. Me too. So me too. Anywho, but it's lovely to meet you. I hope to keep up with you on Twitter. Yeah. We'll be around. I'll get through all of the comments from this lovely.
Yeah, thanks so much for starting the blab. It makes me feel confident. Like I can join any blab now.
Of course. Yeah, I know. It's really awesome. Please do.
Right on. Well, thanks so much. Have a good one. Enjoy your night off.
Yeah.
Bye.
You too. Nice to meet you. Bye. So we're officially done with our TED chat. There's plenty of content on the web, but we're officially done. So I'm going to sign off of this blab here. I'll eventually post this video to my Facebook, not my Facebook, sorry, my Twitter, as well as my YouTube channel. So thanks so much for all of your comments, everyone who's participated. It was nice to meet a few of you face to face. That's awesome. I hope you have a wonderful, inspirational rest of your day, rest of your week. I'll see you next week at TED Ed Chat. Thanks. Bye.